Hello. Based on some of the feedback that I saw in the forum, several of you had difficulty creating the histogram, and more specifically, deciding on how to create the bins, or as your textbook calls them, the class intervals. So if you go to your textbook, you're in page 87, you've been given several kind of rules or guidelines to follow in creating these intervals. So that's typically how histograms are created. We have intervals of scores, and then we're able to demonstrate the frequency of score for each interval. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how this can be done. So as you can see, I just have one variable that you were working with. I have the height variable, and I have them listed as they are in your textbook. And so one of the first steps we do when we create our class intervals, or in this case our bins, is we need to get a sense of what the range of scores is. So one way that I like to do that is I will go ahead and organize the data. So I highlight all of my data points and go to the data menu, and then there's a sort function, and it will allow me to sort the data based upon value from highest to lowest or lowest to highest, however you want to do that. And so now I have a sense of the range of scores. So my lowest score is 44, my highest is 87. So now I need to start to create my bins. So what I need to do is decide what the lower boundary of my first interval or bin is going to be. And usually we like it to be, typically it just only has to be one value less than the lowest value in our data. So in this case, it would only have to be 43. Sometimes people like to create their class intervals on even numbers, so maybe we want it to be a 40 would be the lowest value and go from there. So it's really kind of an individual preference as to how you want to do that. So my first step then would be to create the lower boundary for my first bin or my first interval. So let's just go with kind of a nice round way to do it. So let's make our lowest bin be 40. Okay, and I want my class interval to be 5 wide, 5 integers or values wide. So if my lowest value is 40, that's one value. 41, 42, 43, 44 would be 5 values. So the lower boundary for my next bin would be 45. And then I would continue to go ahead and create those bins. So I would then encompass all of my scores. So you can see my bins are showing values of 5. So 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, that's 5 values. And then I would continue to go through that process. So as you can see, I've then created bins for each of the intervals until I've encompassed the highest score. So our highest score is 87, so the upper range of my highest interval would be 90. So again, if we look at 40, basically what's happening is this bin is looking at how many scores fall between 40 and 44. And then the next bin looks at the scores falling between 45 and 49, and so on. So the score just above the lower bin is the score at which the next interval starts. So we would then go ahead and just create all those bins. All right, so once we have our bins created, we then go to the data analysis tool pack, data analysis menu. We find histogram, click on that, click OK. And we want to input our range of scores. And then we want to input the range that our bins are placed in. Click enter. And then we tell it where we want the output to be. So in this case, I want the output to be over here. Okay, let's make sure I have everything right. So there's our data, there's our bins. Okay, and there's our output range. And then we go ahead and click OK. So let's just make this. Okay, I forgot to go ahead and actually check my cumulative percentage box and then my chart output box, because that's going to give us the actual histogram. So let's go ahead and rerun this then in the same area. Click OK. So there we go. So there's our our bins, the frequency within each bin, the cumulative percentage within, and then there's our histogram with the cumulative percentages over the top of it. If you want to remove those, that's perfectly fine to make your histogram look a little more less cluttered. Either way works depending on what you're trying to show, but typically the cumulatives you would take out so we can see the frequency bars. So that's how we do a histogram with the bins, with the class intervals. So it's really just a matter of figuring out what you want your class intervals to be, and being able to kind of think through and identify those. Again, that's up to us to decide what we want our bins to look like or our class intervals to look like. Excel is not going to tell us that. We need to tell Excel what those are going to be. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit for people that struggle with that. For those of you using Macs, obviously this process is a little bit different. So for those of you who figured it out using the Mac, if you want to share that in a forum with your classmates, that would be greatly appreciated. So if you have any other questions, just go ahead and post in response to this post in the forum, and I'll try my best to answer these questions. So thanks again. Bye.